Okay, now we're going to talk about aiming, and I want to remind you how important it is that you develop a high level of consistency in the way that you deliver your stroke. You've got to think of yourself as a pool shooting machine, or even your entire body and your stroke makes up a rifle. So imagine that you had a rifle and it was made up of 50 different parts, and they weren't connected very solidly, and the rifle was kind of shaking all over the place. Would it be possible to get any measure of consistency with your aiming technique if the rifle you had wasn't very well constructed? So imagine you're shooting it here, but now it's going to fall this way or fall that way, and it's just a bad machine to begin with. So that's the whole point of covering the stance and the stroke and the bridge first, is that you have to be very consistent. So now when we get into aim, you can simply point your pool shooting machine where you want, aim it where you want, and then you can discover the results of that aim and whether it works for you. So I want to remind you, or let you know, to commit to your shot when you're working on your aim. That's one of the most important things you can do. Commit to a line of aim and then see what happens. Basically, be like a scientist. Check your results. Try not to be emotionally involved in your results, even though, yes, you want to make the ball. You might even be highly interested in making the ball. But you have to be willing to miss. You have to be willing to stay down and follow through, and then observe your results. Because that's going to be your best teacher, is watching the results you get and then making a change based on those results. So on the most basic level, what you want to do as far as aiming is find that contact point for your object ball to go into the pocket. So you just pretend that you're going to shoot the ball with the cue right into the pocket. And for now, we're going to stick with the center of the cue ball. We're going to get into spin later and how that's going to affect the aim. Okay, so once I do this, I can come over here and just look where I would hit the ball. It's going to be halfway between the bottom and the top, and the left and the right, so it's going to be right in the middle of the ball. So that's where I want to contact it to get it right in there. So I want to keep my eyes on that spot. Come over here, and then with my eyes on the spot, just hit that contact point and the ball should go in. So you could actually take that aiming method right there and never miss a ball for the rest of your life. So there really is no need to overcomplicate things. And it sounds pretty easy, but that's all you need to know really, is find the contact point and then hit the contact point. And you can become consistent at this just by trial and error. Of course, we're going to get deeper into it because there's a lot of ways to simplify this process. Okay, I think the problem that a lot of people have when they're first starting out in pool is that the contact point on this object ball is very small, and the cue ball is very big in comparison to that contact point. Plus, it's round. So it's hard to wrap their minds around hitting this cue ball onto a small contact point. And while the geometry is pretty simple, you actually have to figure out what it is. But before we get into the geometry, and without actually having to know it, why don't you try and make some balls just by thinking of it that way. I'm going to hit this contact point, tell yourself, with the cue ball, knowing that the ball is round. So think about it like that. Knowing that the cue ball is round, hit that contact point. Just that knowledge could give you the feel to adjust your aim. Okay, I remember when I was a kid in Ohio on my grandpa's table, my brother and I used to run around the table. We could barely see over the edge, and then we play a game without the cue even. It was just fun rolling balls around like that. Yeah, good shot, right? But doing this for hours on end, just watching the way that the balls react and collide off each other. So if you're new to pool, if you're a beginner, or even if you're an intermediate, or even if you're a pro, this could help bring the fun back into the game doing something like this. But it's very valuable because you're not really trying to do anything, and you're just learning. Every time that the balls collide, watching them roll around, you're learning how they react and the direction that they take after their collision, based on how much they're overlapping each other. And you don't even have to think about it that way. You're just going to see it by watching them collide. So that's what I recommend. Just throw the balls around on the table and just watch how they collide and have fun with it. And your mind is going to put together a lot. Your brain is going to teach you a lot about the direction that the balls take after they collide. Okay, what I've done is I've placed the 8-ball in between you and the pocket. So the camera there is you. And this is your shot on the 8-ball to win the game. And how you find that contact point on this 8 is to walk to exactly where you are and place the 8-ball on your line of sight, directly in between you and the pocket where you want it to go. What I've tried to do is line it up in between the 2 points here, so the 8-ball should be lined up over to this side of the pocket because you don't want to hit this point going in. So make sure you're going for the opening of the pocket based on where you are. And we call that the pro side of the pocket, especially when you're near the rail, even closer to the rail. You want to make sure you go for the opening. Okay, so that's part of your aim. You're trying to figure out the exact line. So what you do is you place the 8-ball right there, and then now you can see the exact center of the 8, and that's your contact point. So it's the same spot as if you're going to walk over here and hit the 8-ball right there. And that's how you figure out where you want to hit the 8. No matter where the cue ball is, it could be anywhere over here, that contact point is going to stay the same. It's pretty easy to do, pretty easy to aim for if the cue ball is on that line as well. So now the cue ball and the 8-ball should be both lined up. So all I have to do is aim the center of the cue ball right to the center of the 8-ball, and you should make the 8-ball right into the pocket. So your straight-in shots, as far as aiming goes, it's really easy because the actual contact point is the same point that you're going to aim at. Where we run into a little more complication is anytime we have an angle, and now we have to figure out how to hit that contact point because the ball is round. And I'll show you why people have problems with this. But first we'll hit the ball. Let's go ahead and make this. Okay. So as long as you do aim at that 8-ball in the middle and you don't hit any left or right spin on the cue ball, you're going to make it. Because the left or right spin is actually going to throw the cue ball offline, and you're not going to hit the 8-ball where you want. Okay, so now I'm going to show you what happens when you actually aim for the contact point. If you aim directly at the contact point when you have an angle on the cue ball, here's what happens. Okay? So that shows you that the contact point is not always the aiming point. And what we want at the moment of contact is that cue ball is going to be touching the 8-ball. That's where the cue ball is going to be at the moment of contact. So that's what you want. And the problem that I had when I shot from the angle is that I aimed directly at this point, and now that's what happened at the moment of contact. and it lines up straight to the rail. So now we're going to go over how you can get the cue ball right here every time to make your shots. Alright, so to illustrate that the contact point is not necessarily the aiming point on an angled shot, I have a quarter here, and I put it on the rail just so it's barely hanging off the edge. What I want to do is hit this quarter off the table with the cue ball right here. So I'm going to start out, I'm going to aim the center of the cue ball directly at the edge of that quarter like this. And that's what happens. So here we go. Now I'm going to aim the edge of the cue ball, the left edge, to the quarter and see what happens. Aha! So there we go. The contact point is not necessarily the aiming point. Okay, so the 5 ball is our object ball. We want to make it right down this line into the pocket. The cue ball, that's where it's going to be touching the 5 at the moment of contact. So they're supposed to be on the same line right here. So they're right on this line and they're touching. If you draw a line in between the centers, that's called the line of centers. So the contact point is right in here. Now this is where the cue ball is at the moment of contact. And I have all these balls out here representing cue balls in different positions. And the point here is that it doesn't matter where your cue ball is, it's still going to have to end up here at the moment of contact so that the line of centers is taking you into the pocket. Now remember the coin drill we did on our last shot. Now pretend this contact point is the coin. And if you're starting from an angle like we did in that shot, if you aim directly at the coin with the center of the ball, here's what you're going to get. So you're going to miss that shot. So the point here is you want the edge of the ball from here to end up on the contact point. So how do we do that? Well, the idea is that you want to aim the center of the cue ball at the center of the cue ball at the moment of contact. So that's what you need, and considering that the balls are 2 1/4 inches in diameter, this center of the cue ball is going to be 1 1/8 of an inch back from that contact point. So if you hit center ball on the cue ball, no matter where it is, at a spot that's 1 1/8 inch back here, then you're going to make the ball in the pocket. Okay, just to remind you, the only cue ball position here that I can aim directly at the contact point on the 5 is this one, because it's straight in. So as soon as I move off to an angle, I have to aim the center of the cue ball not at the contact point, but a little bit off of the contact point, which turns out to be the center of what we call the ghost ball. So this ghost ball, it's actually real at the moment of contact, but if you can visualize it while you're still lined up at the cue ball and aim straight into it, as long as you're using center ball, then you're going to make that shot. Okay, so I have these little paper cutouts. This ball right here was the 5 ball. That's your object ball. And here's the cue ball. Take them away. And say our cue ball from this position right here. So what we need to do is shoot this ball directly over to here. To illustrate it further, I want to shoot the cue ball, imagine that's a cue ball, straight down this line. And there's the contact point right in there. So see the difference between this line right here, and then that would be the line if I aim to the contact point. So you want to be aware of that. So this being our stroking line, that's where we're actually going to set up. See my cue is going to be on this stroking line way back here. When I follow through, my cue is going to go right on that line. Right towards the center of the imaginary cue ball. And right through the real cue ball. So it's the same for all these cue ball positions. It's going to aim right there. Okay, have you ever heard this saying, all roads lead to Rome? Well, here it is. This is Rome, my friends. This is the ghost ball. These 7 balls here represent potential cue ball starting positions. And that number is infinite. The cue ball could be anywhere out here. These are actually a little bit more than 90 degrees outside of this angle. This is about 90 degrees. Or you could count it from this way. Here's straight in. 90 degrees would be over here. So anything inside the 90 degrees you can make. So these thin cut shots are possible. And here's what it would look like. Here's the cue ball on the spot. So that's what we're trying to accomplish. It's getting the cue ball right there. We're going to stroke down that line right to the center of the cue ball, regardless of where our cue ball starting position is. So this is assuming we're using center ball. When we use spin, the cue ball is going to deflect offline, and I'll explain that in a minute. But you still need to understand this as your basis for adjusting for spin when you use spin. Let's put a ball out here. Here's our object ball. It's the 8 ball. We'll say, let's say this is our cue ball. Alright, so I'm going to aim directly into that cue ball right there, no matter where I am. Let's see what that looks like. So I'm just going to use center ball. The thing to remember is this is the line that we're going to set our stance up on, our right foot. This is the stroking line that we've worked so hard to understand. I'm going to line up right to the center of that white piece of paper. There we go. Let's see how it looks with the cut shot. Here's our cut shot. Aim right over here. It worked. You see my cue was right over that line. So I hope this illustration helps you visualize the shot making process and the geometry. Even though we're using spheres, you can simplify it in your mind using these circles and the center of a circle on the table. And this right here is very powerful. Here's our ghost ball, and then we've made it into just a circle, and then there's the spot on the table where the ghost ball is resting. I'm going to take away this ball, and I still have a black spot right here. And that's valuable because you don't actually need the whole circle. If you can just visualize the center of the cue ball where it's going to be resting on the table, that's all you need to line up to find this line from wherever the cue ball starting position is. So let's say we're over here. I'm just going to line up right to that spot. Let's see, I have the walls in my way right there. Let's come over here. I'm going to line the cue ball right up to that spot on the table. Here, let's take an object ball. see that again from this angle because the camera's looking right down that line. But watch my cue, how it's going to stay on that stroking line. There we go. Alright, now I'm not really thinking about controlling the cue ball right now. But I probably should. Let's do that one again. This time I'm going to put a little backspin on the cue ball. Now remember, when I say hit the cue ball in the middle, that could include anywhere on the vertical axis, the center vertical axis of the cue ball. And that's not going to affect the direction of the cue ball left or right. So I'll hit this one low, but on the center axis. Right there. And I avoid this scratch, but looks like I got another one almost. Anyway, we're just worried about shot making right now. Alright, so incidentally, say I have a ball blocking me right here and I want to make this ball. If I'm going to masse this cue ball, I'm still going to have to hit this ghost ball right here. So that's my target in terms of the moment of impact for the cue ball, regardless of what I'm going to be doing. Same thing would hold true for a kick shot. If I wanted to kick the cue ball over to here, that's my target. And your 8 ball is right up here. Here's your stroking line right here. Basically, your throwing motion is going to go right down this line, right to the center of the ghost ball. And that's going to be, it's going to look like this at the moment of contact. Okay, so from an angle like this, remember the contact point is in here. If you aim the center of the cue ball directly at this contact point, then this is going to happen. You're going to shoot the 8 ball right into the rail. So be aware of this ghost ball and do your best to judge where the center of that is going to be. Before long you'll get the hang of it. But there it is. Okay, when you're using the find the contact point and hit the contact point method, what you do is you come over here to look at your object ball and line it up with the pocket, and you want to actually line it up with a specific spot in the pocket. So I like to do where the pocket, this leather part or rubber part on some tables where it meets the green felt. So you can see it from here. It's this little line, or this line right here. See the green felt and the pocket meet. Sometimes from this angle that's a good line. Anyway, you're going to pick a spot in the opening, and that's going to give you a line, because that's the only way you can find an actual spot is by having a line. Okay, so when you line it up, really find your contact point, and then once you find it, don't take your eyes off of it as you're walking back to the cue ball. So lock in on it with your eyes, and now keep your eyes locked in on that contact point, and you'll see the cue ball in your peripheral vision line up to where you think you need it to be in order to hit that contact point. And you know that you're going to aim it off from the contact point a little bit, but your eyes are on the contact point. Now, as you're bending down, you got your feet set up, you're bending down in your stance, keep your eyes glued on that contact point. And now you can start looking at your cue ball back and forth from the cue ball to the object ball. And then finally, when you're ready to hit the ball, make sure you're locked in, and then go for it. So you want to be looking at your contact point at the moment that you hit the ball, and you'll actually look at it before you start your last backswing. Okay, now while the contact point is very effective and you will get the feel for it the more you practice it, finding the spot on the table where the ghost ball rests is incredibly powerful, because it actually gives you your exact stroking line in which to set up your stance. So by using that to get in your stance, you're automatically going to be balanced where you need to be balanced. And there's an art to finding that out as well. You can do it just with your eyes and by seeing your spot in the pocket. So that's how I start. I see the spot in the pocket, and then I draw a line with my eyes back through the ball, and then 1/2 of a ball width back behind the back of the ball, right on the table. I just see the spot. And then I line the cue ball up, the center of the cue ball with that spot, and that's where my stance goes. And now I know I'm right where I need to be. Okay, the thing about that is you can use the spot on the table basically just to set up your stance, and it puts you just about perfect on the ball. And then you can forget about it, because now you're down in your stance, and then you can just look at the contact point. So use the spot to line up, and now forget about it, and now look at the ball. And there you go. So you actually use a combination of systems and techniques to get you set up just perfectly. Alright, now if you have a hard time visualizing the spot on the table just by looking, then I have a training exercise, or just a way to reinforce with your own eyes where it is. What you do is you put the cue right up under the edge of the ball like that, and point it on the exact line that you want the ball to go in. So point it from back here. And then pull the cue back 1/2 of a ball width away from the edge of the ball on the table. And now you're going to pivot around here. And that's going to show you the spot on the table and your stroking line. You can just set up behind the cue ball that way. The thing is, here you have to be careful. Once you find your spot here, you can't be moving a tip around on the table on your way back, because now you're going to be off. Even if you're off a 1/4 inch, if you're off at all, then you're probably going to be off target. So the only way this is actually going to work for you is if you keep that tip perfectly there. And then it's just a nice visual aid. Now you have your stroking line. But now you have to come back behind the cue ball the proper distance that you've worked out. So don't let this mess you up, because now you're going to be too close to the cue ball. So now you got to step back and set up like normal so you're balanced. Okay, so from this angle it would look something like this. Come back behind the 4, aim where you want in the pocket, pull back to here. Pivot around like this carefully. Now you can see your line. Now you're going to set up behind the cue ball. Come down right on that stroking line. Okay, come behind the ball, pull back, come over here. And now you want to be careful. If you're up here, you don't want to be rushing to get to the cue ball, and now you're off balance, and then everything's out of whack. So don't let doing this mess up your stance back here. This should just be to find that line to see it. Now you got to have memory of that. Now you got to space yourself between you and the cue ball. You have to have a memory of the line you just found. Now you get your feet, your body turned. So these are aids. These are training aids. Okay, this one is very interesting. I call it the Moscone method. And Joe Tucker, he's a great pool teacher as well. He teaches this system, and he actually developed a set of balls that are numbered. And what this is about is visualizing the entire ball as a sphere and being able to imagine the front of the ball even though you can't see it. So this is my cue ball, here's my ghost ball. What I'm doing here is I'm imagining the front of this cue ball and where it's going to actually contact my object ball, which is the 9 ball. So I have it set up to where this is my contact point, and if I was going to hit the ball and it was going to slide just like this, replacing my ghost ball, that's what's going to happen. So from back here, my contact point on the cue ball is on the front left side of that cue ball, and that's going to contact the 9 ball, sending it in there. So it's just about visualizing the sphere and imagining the front and combining it, imagining where this is contacting the contact point and just seeing that relationship. Let's bring it back here. These are parallel. The stripes have it set up so that this line of centers is parallel to this stripe right here, just to help you visualize this. So I come over here and I see the front of the ball. I imagine the front left side of the ball contacting the back right side of that 9 ball, and it just helps me line it up to see the stroking line. There you go. Okay, here we have a thin cut shot on the 3 ball, and I have the cue ball set up so it's contacting the 3, and this is a traditional ghost ball example. We have the 1 ball, which represents our cue ball starting position. See how the 1 ball is lined up with the ghost ball. Okay, now what we're going to do with this one is I want you to imagine how much this cue ball is overlapping the 3 ball. So if you could actually have X-ray vision and you could see through this cue ball, you would see a curve on that side of the 3. So the curve overlapping the 3 with the cue ball plus the 3 back behind the cue ball, it forms a lens shape, which will be more, the straighter you are, the more that ball is going to overlap your object ball. So now you can't see very much of this 13. Say this is your cue ball. So instead of visualizing the entire ghost ball, what you could do is visualize how much the cue ball is overlapping the 3, and then line it up so that you're going to overlap this 3 ball with your cue ball. So now we'll come back here, I'll replace this. So you're standing behind the cue ball, and then just line it up so the right side of the cue ball in your mind is overlapping the 3 in the proper amount, and then work with that, just see what happens. Okay, so here's a close-up, just see that overlapping part. Now I'm going to change it for you. Say you're a little bit straighter in. Let's see what this looks like. Aha. So you see how it overlaps more the straighter in you get. They have to be touching here. Okay. Alright, so here we have more of a straight in shot. And what I want you to do, this is your cue ball. Now you can imagine the overlap. Now imagine this upper right side of the cue ball coming in right over here. And that should help you visualize how to line up and aim on this shot.